The 2024 St. Louis Rapid Blitz kicked off today with the first 3 rounds of rapid action. Now, this is the 4th event in the 2024 Grand Chess Tour, featuring 7 tour players and 3 wildcards, which for this event are the American players Hikaru Nakamura, Levon Aronian, and Leinier Dominguez. Now, format-wise, the event starts with 3 days of rapid for a total of 9 games, followed by 2 days of blitz, the total of 18 blitz games, and with the rapid games counting for 2 in the overall standings. Jumping into the results, after today's first 3 games, it was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave who took the early lead with 2 wins and a draw for a total of 5 out of 6 points. Tied for second are Levon Aronian, Leinier Dominguez, and Nepomniachtchi, each with 4 out of 6 points. Going into the games, we'll focus on 3 key moments from the day's action. Starting with the first round here, we have the game between Nepomniachtchi against Firouzja. Really complicated endgame. Nepo was pushing this one for some time here as white. He has an extra pawn in the position, but it's hard to make progress as black's pieces are very active. And here he really goes for it with the move g4, breaking through on the king side. Firouzja takes this one, and now king to g3. And you can see white's idea is to run his king up the board. The 2 players were in heavy time trouble at this point. The time control for the rapid is game in 25 with a 10-second increment. So at this point, both players are just relying on the increment to make their moves. And Firouzja goes a bit wrong here with bishop t8. He allows white to push c5. And after rook c3, the bishop comes in with bishop to e6, rook to c2, and this endgame ended up being very chaotic. Nepo could have played h5 here, starting to break up the pawns. Instead, he drops back, rook to c3, bishop d5, bishop e6, bishop b5. Once again, white had a chance here to go h5. Instead, he goes king f4. Now black can take this pawn, and Nepo goes in, king to e5. At this point, Firouzja should play g3. Probably he was very afraid of the move king to f6, but this would actually lose after the move f4, believe it or not, because white doesn't have mate. Check, there's bishop to e8, and black is in time with f takes e3 next. And for example, bishop d7, black takes, white has to move the king, and there's no checkmate here. Black pushes and is going to make a new queen. So good luck calculating that with just seconds on the clock. Instead, Firouzja goes f4, trying to open this up right away. But this runs into rook check, and rook takes f4. Nepo takes this pawn. Firouzja goes g3 here, but now rook to g4. White gets behind this pawn. g2, rook takes g6, and the problem is black's g-pawn here just can't make any progress. White's rook is cutting it off. Meanwhile, white's h-pawn and white's c-pawns are both very strong. In fact, this h-pawn basically unstoppable. So the game saw rook to c2, but now check, h7. This pawn is just promoting, takes bishop to d5, and Firouzja resigned here as he's just not stopping the h-pawn anymore, and that's the end of the game. So with this win, Nepo was one of the several players that ended up in second place on the day. Moving on to the leader after the first day, MVL, he drew his first round, and then he ended up winning his next 2 games. This first one against Praggnanandhaa. Prag was actually doing very well in this endgame earlier on. He had a big advantage. Now things have sort of equalized. And at this point, Prag ends up taking a bit too much risk with his next couple of moves here. Bishop to e1, rook f6, and now b4, looking to open up the queen side, but allowing the knight to come in, knight f4 check, king to d5. And at this point, black's pieces here get very active. So it takes on b4, rook takes h7. Otherwise, black was going to take this pawn on h6, so Prag decides to take this one. But now king to c4, and black's king here gets very active. The b pawn gets very strong. h7, rook h6, the rook gets behind that one. Bishop to d2, white still could have saved this one, rook a7 for example, eventually playing for a5 ideas and looking to trade off all the pawns in the position. But Prag goes wrong, bishop d2, king takes a4, and he takes on f4. This ends up being the decisive mistake in the game, going for the rook endgame. Instead, rook to g7 for example, and white would still be fighting on here. He can go after black's pawns in the position. Instead, we got the rook endgame, and now after takes, this position is actually just a straightforward win for black. He's going to push b3, and the b pawn is very strong. Black's rook on h6 perfectly placed to stop white's h pawn and also be ready to invade with rook h2. So king to e2 is tried, but now b3, king d3, key move here, king to b4, rook b7, b5, rook to d7. Prag not knowing how to make progress. The rook is stuck to this h pawn, and now rook h1 was the final move of the game, as now b2 is coming next, followed by b1 equals queen. White can't stop the b pawn, the h pawn's not going anywhere, and that's it. So this was the first of 2 wins for MVL. His second one was against Nodirbek, another very, very strong junior player in the tournament. In this position, Nodirbek actually was doing quite okay as black here, but he goes wrong with the move bishop to f5. It's a very active move hitting the c2 pawn, but allows bishop to b7 here, and white starts picking up the queen side. So b4 was tried, but now bishop takes a6. Very, very good decision by MVL. The point is that after rook to c6, he's hitting the rook here, so black isn't in time to take the knight on c3. Rook c6, he goes bishop to b5. And here black tries to take the knight first, otherwise white is going to pick up this pawn and just have a very, very nice endgame. So Nodirbek takes the knight, now bishop takes rook, c takes b2, rook b1, knight e8. This is black's idea, defending the pawn with the bishop and going after bishop takes c2. But very, very smart decision here by MVL. He just takes the knight, bishop takes c2, and he gives back the rook. Rook takes b2. And the two players end up in this double bishop endgame, now with equal material, but with white having a very, very strong outside passed a-pawn here. And here plays a4, maybe not the best move. The engine's like bishop to c5 here, but it turns out to be a very difficult endgame for black to hold. As we see, Nodirbek tries to blockade with the bishops, but MVL shows really good technique here. Bishop to c6, bishop dropping back to g2, and next is bishop to f1 to break the blockade. And MVL ends up converting this one in very nice style as well. Bishop g2 now, a7, black is forced to push e4, and eventually the bishop here drops back to f1. Black is tied down defending this a-pawn, and eventually the way white wins here is by trading off these dark square bishops, forcing this trade, and now white's king can simply come into the position. King e3, king d4 is next, and eventually black is going to be in a zugzwang, either allowing white's king to enter on the queen side or on the king side. So f4, Nodirbek tries but takes. h4, king f1, the king just comes back around for the h-pawn, king d6, bishop f7. Black resign here as white is winning the g-pawn as well, and it's all over. So with the second one, MVL took the clear lead in the event with a total of 5 out of 6 points. Looking ahead to tomorrow's pairings, we've got a number of exciting matchups, including Fabiano Caruana white against MVL in the 4th round of Rapid. We also have Firouzja white against Nakamura, Nepo white against Wesley. So in the battle of the juniors as well, Praggnanandhaa white against Nodirbek, Abdusattorov. And folks, who are you rooting for in this tournament? Let us know in the comments. That's going to do it for this recap, and until next time, take care.